want to ask you about a couple other things going on in your company. I know that, so one thing I've definitely learned from knowing you over the last several years is that you seem pretty analytical. You're definitely a hustler. Like, you make things happen and get them done, but I also feel like you're fairly analytical in terms of looking at your business and breaking it down, dissecting it, and figuring out what's working, what's not working, and you're definitely awesome at automation. And we were talking a while back, and if I remember correctly, you've had a number of discoveries, and I can't remember exactly what it was, but you had something around your sales cycle that you had discovered. I don't know if this rings a bell, but it was a really great tip. Do you know what I'm talking about? Can you speak to that one?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think there's usually a shotgun approach in our industry. I did the same thing up to 4 or 5 years ago. But when I really started to dissect the life cycle of a customer and the sales cycle, where they're at in that pipeline or actually cycle as a customer, when we could clearly define where they're at and what stage they're in, and then go down to even a more detailed level, what service it was portraying to, that's where the value really started to come out. So if you take a really base example of a lawn mowing customer, from basically lead all the way through fulfillment, and then probably eventually the customer is going to cancel your service. So when we were able to identify a lead coming in, let's say for lawn mowing, and this person came in, so we've segmented them as a lawn mowing prospect. We get them into our sales funnel. We're going to educate them to why our company is different and try to overcome some price objections up front so we can sell at a higher level value service. And then on the educational part, we're going to overcome these price objections. So, different things for pricing, or companies always forget to leave a gate open for the fence and their dog may run out and potentially get hit by a car. So any of these sales objections or price objections, we're going to upfront address these, as well as build ourselves as a topic expert to have more perceived value. And then this is kind of where the segmentation comes in. So now they're going to go in, we're going to submit an estimate via over the phone or in person. We're going to have a systematic way of following up with the customer. So we're going to say they've gone from a lead to a pre-estimate that's being educated to a potential lead with an estimate submitted. And we're going to follow up until we close. So in our company, we try to go from 0 to 20 days to close the sale out. Reason being is we found statistically that most sales close either between 0 and 48 hours or between 7 and 10 days. And without setting up a systematic way of ensuring that your follow-up on each sales call throughout that cycle of 20 days happens in a systematic way, most companies get too busy. So we've actually set it up an automated to-do or task at every 2 to 3 days with a standardized call strip, so our messaging is the same each and every time, to make sure all those sales calls actually happen the way they should. At this point, they're either going to become a customer or not become a customer. So now, as we're segmenting them down through the channel, they become hopefully a customer. So at that point, we have a lawn mowing customer that we need to have an automated way or a way through a to-do to follow up to make sure they're happy. And on the flip side of that, if they don't become a customer, we want to be able to segment every service that we have a loss estimate for. So back to the lawn mowing example, if we're able to segment them and circle back 6 to 12 months later and say, hey, Mrs. Smith, we're so sorry for whatever reason you didn't sign up for our lawn mowing, and we can speak to her on a personal level, whether it be a phone call or email or a hard copy letter of mail. In our company internally this year, we had 176 estimate requests based off loss estimates, and we closed those at about a 65%. So without being able to segment that they had lost an estimate for lawn mowing and be able to speak on a personal level and ask to re-estimate that would just basically be lost money that we had paid to acquire an estimate and just leave it behind. So we find a lot of companies, once they lose an estimate, just forget about that person. But you paid for that lead acquisition, so you might as well work that every year, every 6 to 12 months, to try to make them become a customer. And
I think
in addition
fantastic.
to that, in addition to that, on the flip side, eventually your customer life cycle is going to end with a canceled service. So we segment everybody who cancels a service, whether it be lawn mowing or even in the house cleaning industry. It could be a biweekly cleaning that cancels. But if you segment that per service, you can actually go back and talk specifically to the service they canceled And this is where I think a major disconnect is. You may have a lawn mowing customer that cancels, but they may still be a fertilization and pest control customer. So we don't want to send a generic marketing message out, hey, sorry you canceled our service, it's going to get you back. No, we want to speak to them specifically to the service they canceled, so the marketing is personal and meaningful. And we find that 80% of the people that do cancel us, and companies around the world, are basically indifferent. What we mean by that is they're not necessarily happy with the service and not really upset. You just didn't wow them. So they may have a lower price option down the street that they tried out and that didn't work out. Or maybe their kid came home from school, needed some book money for college, and they started cutting the lawn, but 4 years later, they're in need of a lawn care service. So by staying in front of them in a non-sales way, but just a very educational and comfortable way, you've allowed to retain that relationship and hopefully build some equity with them. So when they're looking to hire another contractor, you're right there on top of their mind.
That's fantastic. I think the point I want to make about what you just said is for everybody listening to really notice at the level that you're thinking. I just don't think most companies are thinking at this level, but I know that if you look at the commonalities among the really successful companies, the guys that get big fast, the guys that build really profitable companies, they're thinking more like you, or they're hiring somebody to help them think like you're thinking, and then they're doing the extra work. I know you've automated most of it at this point, but initially you had to do the extra work to figure out the system. You had to send the emails, you had to do the follow-up, you had to look at the numbers, and from that you figured out a system and then you automated it so you never have to mess with it again. But I feel that most companies don't do that work, and because they don't do that work, their company never turns into anything great. And so the companies that are thinking like you're thinking, the companies that are doing the work like you're doing, and then the companies that automate it to make sure that it actually happens and that the ball doesn't get dropped at the worst time of year, for example, spring, or at the best time of year to market to that client to get them back as a mowing client or fertilization company. The companies that are doing that stuff, they're the ones that win. And they're doing all the little things that are invisible to all their competitors, and the competitors just think they're getting lucky, but no, they're really doing what you're doing. And so I think it's a phenomenal takeaway. The other one I think is a really good takeaway is the value of segmentation. Is that something that you're doing across the board? Like when you're marketing to new clients, so somebody that's not even a client of yours, do you use a lot of segmentation as well? Or is it even possible? How do you think about segmentation with new clients?
Yeah, absolutely. And even if you're not automating it, we've done this for several years without automation. So even if it's something you're not interested in, or it's not the size of the business you're at now, these are applicable in any business at any size. So right from lead acquisition. So whether they're hitting our website for a estimate or they're calling our office, we have a set form. And even if your office doesn't have a computer, you can literally have a pen and paper and calculate these eventually in a Google Doc or an Excel sheet. But as you're qualifying that customer and they're calling your office, you should have a set standard couple questions that you ask. And one of them would be is, what are the services you're interested in? What are the services, that you maybe possibly already have hired out? So you can segment them per service and where their needs are. And that seemed to be the biggest return on investment, being able to speak to the person on a personal level, what their specific needs are, not just sending out a generic flyer and saying, hey, we offer weekly and biweekly house cleaning. If they're interested in weekly cleaning, let's talk to them on the level of weekly cleaning.
Right.
Or weekly lawn mowing. Yep. There's a personal connection there.
Yep. That's fantastic. Well, thanks for that. Great advice.